Hello and welcome back to Pepp Talks. I hope you have had an incredible week. Today I am joined by the lovely Becki of Rebecca Beard. Beard or Baird? Beard.
Beard.
Beard, as in beard.
As in
Rebecca
facial hair,
Beard,
yeah.
nutrition. You'd think we'd never spoken before. We honestly have. I've just only ever referred to her as Becki. So, um, welcome, Becki. It's so gorgeous to have you here. Obviously, we're here to talk a little bit about nutrition, and I'm sure we'll talk about some other things too, as we've just chatted about before we've hit record. So, before we go any further, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers, and maybe explain a little bit about your backstory and how you got to the place where you are now and why you are working in the field of nutrition?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. So I'm Becki, and it's funny actually that you said Becki Bird because when I was at school, I once got referred to as Becki Bread. So there's all variations. So whatever it is. But yeah, so I am a in my 40s. I am a busy mum to primary age children. But before I came to the world of nutrition, I was a primary school teacher for about 10 years it probably would have been. And actually I loved teaching. I absolutely loved it. And when I had my first child, I was lucky enough to be able to go part-time. So that did really help. Because obviously teaching is as if you've got any teachers listening, it's a very demanding job and it's very hard to switch off from. So going part-time was great. But when I had my second child, and what I was finding was that even though I was part-time, I could not switch off. So even when I was away from school, I'd done my work and my planning, I was at home playing with the children, my mind was taken up with, right, I've got to go and do that, and I've got to remember to go and tell that teacher this, and what am I going to do next week? And actually, did that lesson go as well as it could have done? And my mind was just constantly on school. And I'd never really thought about ever leaving teaching, because I think when you're a teacher, you just sort of, that's part of who you are a little bit. And then one day my partner said, right, if you ever want to do something different, then let's have a chat. Oh, okay. Wow, I had never even considered it. So anyway, I decided then that I would leave teaching and just have a bit of a break. So at that point, massive leap of faith. I didn't actually have a plan. So I left teaching without a plan. And I ended up working for my partner's company doing cleaning, which actually was one of the best decisions that I made. So what it gave me was the opposite of teaching. So I'd go in, number one, I'd move my body, which I've realized since for me is massive. That's how I clear my mind. So just moving my body was huge. Clearing out my mind. So I didn't have all the planning to be thinking of. I'd go in, I'd clean, and I'd leave. And what I started noticing was I was just naturally listening in to loads of podcasts about functional medicine. So functional medicine is sort of when you look at the root cause of things. And I started listening, and I was drawn to it. And we chatted about this before actually. So I've had health anxiety since I was a child. And that there's like a fear sometimes of, what if things go wrong, and what do you do, and that feeling of being out of control a little bit. And when I started listening to all these podcasts and things and webinars about the power and the intelligence of the body, and how if you give it the right things that your body needs, so everyone's different, so your body, if you give your body what it needs, it wants to work.
Yeah.
It knows what to do. And it opened something up in me. And I just thought, wow, I've lived with this sort of fear that what if it goes wrong in my body? And now I've opened up this world where the body knows what to do.
Yeah.
It's so intelligent. So anyway, so that sort of led me to decide that I wanted to work in that field. And I went back to uni to study nutrition and lifestyle medicine, which has meant I'm a qualified nutritional therapist. And here I am.
It's an amazing story. What I particularly love is the fact that you took on what would seem to most people as a real step down in your career path. You took on a job as a cleaner, having been, I'm sure, an incredible teacher. And many people would probably look on that and think, well, that's a really crazy choice.
Mm,
Why would you do that? Why would you leave teaching to become a cleaner? And I know
mm,
you said you left teaching not really having any plan at all. They might also be questioning that as well, and thinking, well, that's crazy too. Surely you want to have a plan, because I think so many of us have that like deep need to know that we've got financial security and to
yeah.
know that there's a job to go to. And I know from the people I interact with, not so much in the business world, but more in my personal life, that I'm thinking of one person in particular who has been made redundant in recent years. And the panic that
Mm,
ensued because he'd been made redundant was quite phenomenal when I consider what I've been through and the choices and changes I've made in my life. And actually, I see redundancy as an opportunity, and you saw leaving teaching as an opportunity. And the cleaning, whilst it, yes, from the outside looked like an absolute step down in your career progression, gave you not, it gave you thinking space, because
that's
it sounds to me
exactly.
like you didn't know what you wanted to do. You just knew that teaching wasn't quite the right fit for your current chapter, season, time of life,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
So you knew that that wasn't quite right, but you didn't know what the next thing was, what the right thing was, or the next right thing. Because I'm a really strong believer that we can feel like we're doing the right thing right here, right now, but in 2 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, that thing that's right now might not be right then. And so when we talk about picking the right thing, it's the right thing for the season we're currently in, for the period of life we're currently in. But yeah, I just really love that you're using you went into cleaning. And it's something that I've noticed in my own world, is that actually when you step away from the thinking brain and you're in that like real subconscious brain, so you're doing the cleaning or the decluttering, or you're walking the dog, or you're um I don't know what else, like
Doing the
mowing the
dishes.
lawn or something
Yeah,
like that. So you're
yeah.
doing something, you're not meditating, you're not writing in your journal, you're doing something that feels, I want to say productive, but that's not really the word.
Mm,
But you're doing something that's making a difference to something or other, but your brain isn't really having to focus on anything other than mopping the floor or pushing the lawnmower, and it
yeah,
allows it the space to give you the messages you need to hear, because they're there, as you say, the body already
absolutely.
knows.
And actually, all of those things, those sorts of activities, so whether it's cleaning, whether it's doing the dishes, whether it's folding laundry, it's actually activating the creative part of your brain. So while you're sort of doing those things, exactly what you said, your brain is working through those problems that you've been mulling over, maybe those choices you've been sort of thinking about that are in there somewhere. And that's why people say they have these like light bulb moments while they were, I don't know, like they're doing the gardening. And so, they might have sat at their laptop for hours trying to
Yeah,
figure out, what am I going to do? And then they just go outside, decide to go and pot some plants or something. And bing, there it goes. Because you've activated that part of
yeah,
your brain and you've given it the space. And that's exactly what, like you say, with the cleaning. Because when I was in teaching, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. When you're in that sort of a really high pressure job, and you might know underneath the surface, this isn't quite what I want to do. You haven't got the brain space to think what you want to do.
no,
It's not possible, especially then if you have a family, or you might have aging parents, or you've got everything else going on in your life. It's not possible. I would really challenge anyone to be able in that scenario to really get that light bulb moment of what they need to do, because our
yeah, I,
brains
I
haven't got
couldn't
space.
could not agree more. um It's the non-thinking time that has the powerful effect. And I think the other thing that's important to share, and somebody shared this with me the other day, and I'm only really connecting the dots now, actually, literally as we're speaking, is she was sharing it in relation to knitting or crocheting, and she was saying that
Mm,
when you're using your hands for something, it brings on board the creative part of your brain, and it does something in your brain neurology to
yeah.
actually link the creative and the more logical brains together.
Mm.
Don't quote me on all the science on this, anybody listening, but there is something in this for sure, because what we're saying now is when you're cleaning, when you're gardening, when you're doing the washing up, you're using your hands
Yeah.
for not necessarily for something creative, but you are using your hands, and you are therefore triggering whatever this thing is that was shared with me the other day. You're triggering that neurological change. It might be a temporary change rather than a permanent change, but it's allowing the
And that
brain.
connection, isn't it, between,
Yeah,
like you say, the two parts of the brain that need to communicate.
yeah,
Again, don't this isn't my area of expertise either, so don't quote either of us with this, but it's yeah, there's definitely something in it,
yeah.
absolutely.
And as you say, people get those inspired moments usually when they're not even thinking about it. So it's in the shower, when they're driving, when they're doing the washing up, all those sorts of things, when you're not even consciously thinking about whatever it is that you thought you needed to think about. So yeah, I really love that cleaning was like your turning point, even though from the
Yeah.
outside world it would have looked like a really, really ridiculous decision. So we obviously want to talk about nutrition. I'd love you to share with the listeners your, I guess, your top tips or your top tips on how we can, as business owners in particular, how we can fuel our brains and our bodies to be optimal. Never perfect, but be optimal in our working days and in our non-working days as well. Have you got any tips you can share with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the the mistakes that people make if they want to start making changes with anything, but I would see it in sort of nutrition and that sort of thing, is to try and do everything all at once. So, first of all, what I would say to anyone listening, if they do want to make changes, so I'll run through a few things, but to pick the one, maybe two that resonate with you the most, that you really feel, do you know what? I haven't tried that. And actually, I'm really curious to see what that could do. Because when we try and change everything, we do really well for a few days, maybe even a week, but then life gets in the way and we haven't cemented those changes, those habits, and they just very quickly, actually, one by one, they start to go. So that's what I would say first and foremost, is choose one or two, and then maybe come back to the episode and think, oh, actually, I've cemented that now. I'm gonna introduce something else. The second thing I'd say is to approach any changes with curiosity. So this is about, it's not about being perfect. It's not about this is going to change everything for me, or if then I stop doing it for a few days, I've failed. If we approach things like this with curiosity, what you're doing is you're tapping into how your body feels. You're tapping into the messages that your body is desperately trying to tell you. So those headaches, those heavy periods, that poor night's sleep, they're all messages that you're from your body, that your body is desperately trying to get you to listen. And when we're, business owners, we are so busy. We are constantly on the treadmill. We're probably trying to squeeze things into the school run. We don't always have time to stop and to listen in. So that's what I'd also say, is if you make any changes, be curious and think, oh, let's see, how am I going to feel in a week? Let's check in with myself. So, okay, number one, I always say, and this is, some women don't feel great about this, but it does shift the needle: breakfast. So a breakfast that will have protein, that is going to have fiber, that is going to have some unsaturated fats, which people might have heard of, healthy fats. which would be things like nuts and seeds and some hemp, flax seeds, that sort of thing. Starting off the day with the sort of the golden trio of the protein, the unsaturated fats, and the fiber. What that's going to do, number one, is send a signal to your nervous system that you're safe. So people just think it's about energy. It's not just about energy. When we are, especially in that sort of perimenopause transition, hormones are maybe changing slightly. We might be living quite a stress life. We can often sort of trigger that sort of cortisol release too often. So by going a long time in the morning without eating, we're putting a further stress on our body, which isn't helpful, really.
And the piece of toast doesn't really cut it, does it? Let's be honest.
So
Piece of
the
toast
piece of
with a bit
toast,
of, even if
no,
it's got a bit of peanut butter on, it's not really, yes, you're getting your healthy fats and it helps a little bit, but ultimately toast is not a good start to the day, and neither is a
no,
bowl of
it's
granola
not. And
because
toast could have got us through in our 20s. Toast
yeah,
maybe even got us through in our, in our 30s to a certain extent. But so many women say that when they sort of hit that late 30s, 40s mark, even if they've changed nothing, things start to feel different. And that would be a really good example. And actually, if someone loves, I mean, some people just love their routine. So if someone listening is like, but I love, I'm eating breakfast, I'm having peanut butter on toast, I'm doing really well. Keep your peanut butter on toast, add a little side with, say, some raspberries, couple of spoonfuls of Greek yogurt, and straight away you have boosted those nutrients.
And I think that's the important thing, isn't it? With any habit changes as well, it's not about completely overhauling everything.
No.
It's about where can you make some really simple, small changes that actually have such an impact that why would you not do them? Because it is so easy to add a few raspberries and a little bit of Greek yogurt on the side of a piece of toast and peanut butter. I mean, it doesn't take any extra effort, and yet it can have such an impact on your energy levels throughout the day.
Absolutely. So take that example. So adding in the Greek yogurt, you've got a boost of protein. You've got some nice fats in there as well. Having the raspberries on the side are great for the fiber. So we need fiber. I won't go into it too much. We're limited on time, but we need fiber for our gut health, for our digestion. So just adding in those two things will keep people's blood sugar. It's all about the blood sugar and keeping it as stable as we can. So if women are noticing that they're having to grab for that coffee late morning, or they're having to grab for the biscuits or something late morning, what the body's telling you is that it needs a quick pick me up. So we need to trace that back a little bit, and then the chances are whatever the breakfast was, if there was breakfast at all, it maybe spiked that blood sugar quite quickly. So a piece of toast, particularly if it's sort of more refined, like more white sort of toast, might spike that blood sugar quite quickly, so you might have that energy burst straight away and you're feeling great, you've done the school run. But then the problem is that energy gets used up really, really quickly. And that's when you can plummet down. The body goes into a bit of a panic mode. And that's when it's sending you the signals, we need something quick. And that's when the quick might be the coffee, the quick might be the biscuits, because the body's saying to you, we need energy now. Whereas if you've added in the Greek yogurt on the side with some maybe some chia seeds, maybe some raspberries, that energy is not going to be like this. It's going to be nice and steady. And what so many women notice for those tiny changes is that energy is sustained pretty much through till lunchtime.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, and I know the answer to this because I'm a certified nutritionist too. So I'm massively on board.
I never knew that.
Yeah,
Sue.
so I'm not as qualified as you. I don't have a degree, but I'm I'm pretty
Wow, I
hot on
love
the nutrition.
that.
But so I know the answer, but I know that there will be people listening to this who will be thinking, okay, so if I'm going to have my Greek yogurt, and bear in mind, I'm going to add in here as well, you need Greek yogurt, not Greek style yogurt.
Style yogurt, absolutely.
They're completely different things. So Greek yogurt is your go-to. My question to you, Becki, is, can I have 0% Greek yogurt?
So, Sue, this is actually quite a difficult question to answer. And I tell
Mm.
you why. It used to be quite a straightforward question to answer, and the answer would be no, you
Yeah.
want to have some fats in it. However, it's not quite as straightforward. So what used to happen with low fat or zero fat is that then to make that sort of beautiful texture, which we all know of Greek yogurt, it's that really sort of satiating, lovely texture. If it was, that's the fat that's causing that texture. So when they removed the fat, what happened was they lost the textures. They had to start adding in loads of emulsifiers and all things like that actually we've now realized aren't that great for us, particularly for our gut health. However, when I was doing some research the other day for my group program, and I went to a few supermarkets and I was studying all the Greek yogurts, and actually it's now no longer completely consistent. So you can get a lower fat yogurt, Greek yogurt, that doesn't have any of the nasty things in, also has a good amount of protein in. So what I would recommend, instead of concerning ourselves too much with if it says zero fat or 10% fat or anything like that, simply turn over the tub that it's in.
Yeah.
Number one, look at the ingredients. You just want milk.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that you want in there. It might say, you might also see some of the why is I'm having a brain moment, the cultures, there we go.
Oh,
You might
yeah.
also see the cultures. That isn't an ingredient that's been added, so that's fine. You're fine. It's good, in fact, if you've got the cultures in there. There'll be some very, very, very long words. But then you need to look at the protein. So when you see the little bit where it says the carbs and that sort of thing. So you just want to get a Greek yogurt that might have sort of 10 grams of protein
Per
per
100
100
grams.
grams.
Yeah. Per
Yeah.
100.
And that
Yeah.
that is what actually you want to be looking at more
Yeah.
than the label on the front. Because you're absolutely right. When what you don't want a lot of the time with these low fat or no fat products, like we say, it's stuffed full of things that we just don't want to have.
Yeah. And if I was so we talked about unsaturated fats.
Yeah.
Greek yogurt, does that fall into unsaturated fats or is that a saturated fat?
Yeah, so dairy, they are saturated, it would be a saturated fat.
Yeah.
However, again, it's a little bit more nuanced. So if you are, and this is where I love that we're talking about this, because this is where nutrition is so personalized. So this is where one size does not fit everybody.
Yeah.
So if you've got a listener who is particularly concerned with, and we will not get into the topic of cholesterol because that is a whole nother
No, no, no.
thing. But if for whatever reason they might struggle digesting fats, they might get quite bloated after consuming a fatty meal. They might get a little bit of pain on like the right side. That might suggest that their gallbladder is maybe struggles a little bit with processing fats. They might want to lean slightly more towards a lower fat type diet. That's all going to be guided by their doctor, though. That isn't something that I'm sort of telling everybody. If you sometimes you feel a bit bloated after a fatty meal, Becki said no, I'm absolutely not. This is more if somebody knows that they struggle with digesting fats. Or if somebody does, if they have been told by their doctor that they do have higher cholesterol levels than they would like to, if they've got a family history of cardiovascular incidences, and say they might want to avoid medication, then again, they might want to give it a go. And it's all about trying something. They might think, well, actually, that I noticed that I started eating all this Greek yogurt and my cholesterol went up. I'd be quite surprised by that, but it could happen. So somebody might again want to be curious and try these things and see how that works. So yeah, it's definitely not a one size fits all. And actually, saturated fats, they were sort of given a really bad rep, and not all saturated fats are equal. Again, so the saturated fat in Greek yogurt, is not going to be the same as the saturated fat in a burger, for example. It's not going to be used by the body in the same way. So it's much more complicated and nuanced than we've sort of historically been led to believe.
Yeah. I think the key to it for everybody listening is read the labels.
Absolutely.
Anything that's got more ingredients in it than it really needs to have doesn't need to be eaten. Unless you're having it for a treat, of course.
Oh gosh, absolutely. And this is where, you come back to, this doesn't need to be perfect.
No. And I think it's like the one that springs to mind is peanut butter. Like peanut butter only needs to contain peanuts. It doesn't need to have, and maybe a little bit of salt for flavoring, but nothing else. If it's got any other oils in there or whatever, put it back on the shelf.
Yeah.
If you're going to have peanut butter, it just needs to have peanuts in it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's move on to tip number 2.
Yeah. So tip number 2, coffee after food. So this actually, again, takes a little time, maybe a little bit of a shift, but coffee in some people, again, this is where it's really personalized, can actually cause a bit of a cortisol effect. It can cause a bit of a blood sugar spike in some people. It's not in everybody. So by having food first, what that does is just sort of calms everything down first. So it sort of creates the terrain where your body's going to be able to cope with that coffee.
I guess it's not hitting an empty stomach, is it? And so it's not going straight into the bloodstream really quickly. There's other things going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what women often find with that is just making a really simple shift. So if, for example, somebody's used to getting up, having their coffee, go on the school run, then maybe later on at the desk having breakfast, I would just say, again, let's be curious. Let's just see, let's give it a couple of weeks, try switching for something in the morning when you say herbal tea, a lot of people go, oh my God, are you crazy? I'm used to having my coffee and you're telling me to have a herbal tea. But just give it a go, or something that, is maybe even going half, or, going a little bit slower, half caffeine and half, a good quality decaf, something like that. And then trying to have breakfast and seeing then that first coffee a little bit later in the morning as a real sort of a mid-morning treat for you to have. So to really look forward to having it. So instead of it being like a grab it in the morning, that's going to get me through, sort of thinking, right, I'm going to nourish my body with my breakfast, and I'm going to really look forward to that 10:30 coffee, and see how you feel after a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
See how you feel. If someone's struggling with sleep, I would always recommend trying to keep caffeine earlier on in the day, again as a trial, and just see how that works.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence says that it stays around in your body for so long, doesn't it? It's like, is it?
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's a 6-hour half-life.
Yeah, and again, everyone's different. So I know, for me, for example, I've never done genetic testing, but I'm pretty sure if I ever did, there would be signs there, suggestions that actually it takes my body a long time to get rid of things like something like caffeine. But everyone is different. And that's where it is completely nuanced. Like my mom will have a caffeinated coffee in her bed as she's going to sleep, and she sleeps absolutely fine.
It's supposed to be very good for people with ADHD. Caffeine for sleep, which I always find like wild, because people with ADHD typically have very busy brains and a lot of like hormones are flushing around. So to add what I would consider a cortisol spiking ingredient into your body feels really odd to be doing at bedtime. But yeah, I've heard that
a lot of people with ADHD do say that, that the caffeine actually calms them down. So that, again, it's all nuanced, but that's why I'm saying, with the caveat, if someone's struggling to sleep or they're feeling quite anxious, jittery later on in the day, we'd have a little look to see if we can shift that caffeine.
Bring it forward.
Bring it forward a little bit.
Or find yourself a really nice decaf. I mean, those people watching on YouTube will see I'm sipping on a coffee as we're chatting. And I can drink caffeine. I used to be able to drink caffeine more than I can now,
Mm.
but I have to really be careful with it. So I drink decaf at home. I've got a nice proper coffee machine, that like you put the beans in and
Oh,
you froth the milk and
great.
everything.
Yeah.
So I can have like a proper coffee at home. But I found a really nice decaf, so I don't feel like I'm missing out at all. I'm getting the flavors of a caffeinated drink without the after effects. Um, so that would be another tip, I think, is if you can find a
Absolutely.
really good decaf, then you can have your coffee first thing in the morning. You're
Yeah.
getting that flavor hit, but you're not getting the hormone shifts that might happen with the caffeinated version.
Absolutely. And I think, for some people, doing things really slowly, and that's why, that idea of, say, even starting off by just doing the half, just
Yeah,
reducing it slightly, because people can get withdrawal. You can get headaches if you suddenly, go all in and stop caffeine, and then you can actually feel worse before you get better. And that can be the time when people go, oh God, no, this is awful, I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing. So to go a little bit more slowly is, for some people, the way to go.
yeah,
But yeah, I love that. I love
absolutely.
that. Yeah, getting a really nice quality decaf and giving that a go as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, we love that.
Amazing. Right. Let's have your third tip then, Becki.
Okay, I've got two more. So all the evidence points now to weight training, resistance training being the thing that women in perimenopause need to do. And a lot of women, actually, when they start, I'm not quite here yet, but when they start going down to the gym and they're in their routine, they start actually lifting, they feel incredible. So it's wonderful for blood sugar. So insulin resistance apps is just absolutely fantastic to protect against, metabolic syndrome and controlling the blood sugar. Bone and muscle mass. Now, this is one of the things that, in particularly in perimenopause and menopause, we do start losing muscle. Our bone density starts to go down. And actually, later on in life, because this is what we should also be thinking about, it's not just how we're feeling day to day, it's how we want to age. It's
Yeah.
how we want to be in 20, 30 years' time. And actually, resistance training is one of the most studied and documented lifestyle things we can do to promote that healthy aging.
Yeah.
Not just from that, being strong and feeling great, which is obviously a really good side effect from it, but like I said, from that metabolic point of view, cognitively as well, sort of, it's really brain protective. And I know, being a busy woman, being at home, I at the moment haven't quite found that time to go to the gym. So what I try and do is look at how we can tag things on. So a really good way, for example, is when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. So most of us will do that for 2 minutes twice a day. Well, what a brilliant opportunity to do some squats while you're doing it. So to do some uh, or chair squats if someone's not quite ready, to do some wall, when you sit against the wall,
Yeah, a wall sit.
a wall sit, all things like that. So to tag on to something you're already doing. So if you're waiting for the kettle to boil,
Yeah.
if you're not, if you're like me, you're probably already doing then about 6 other jobs while the kettle's boiling. But if you could try and tag it on, so you could do some counter press ups. So there's lots of, it's looking at your daily routine and thinking, right, I'd like to get some resistance training into my day. Where can I tag it onto?
Yeah.
And actually the studies seem to show that doing small pockets, small bursts throughout the day is potentially more impactful than, say, going to the gym once a week and doing a really long session.
Yeah.
So actually, by somebody doing 4 minutes of, in two separate bits, but 2 minutes and 2 minutes of squats most days could actually be really, 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 really beneficial.
Yeah. I'm looking slightly distracted because I've got a whole episode on exercise and why it is a business strategy, not just a health one,
Yeah.
which I just want to reference to people because we're talking here about not having enough time for movement and resistance training particularly. But my argument is if you carve out 15 minutes a day to do something to move your body And it doesn't have to be resistance training. It could
Yeah.
be a really words like a power walk. You want to get the
Yeah.
blood pumping. That, I think that's the key to it. Because again, Becki, you may not know this, but I think the listeners know this. I'm also a qualified personal trainer.
I did know that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I did know that.
So yeah, you want to get the blood pumping because ideally you want to get the blood pumping up to here into your brain. And so if you're just leisurely strolling, that's not going to happen. Yes, you'll get a little bit of movement of blood and oxygen, but ultimately you really want to get your heart going a little bit. But my argument is 15 minutes will make more, you will gain way more than 15 minutes throughout the rest of the day because you will be so much more cognitively able, you'll be
Yeah.
therefore making decisions quicker, you'll be doing things quicker, you'll be more focused.
More
So
motivated as well. Like the hormones that are, the
yeah,
endorphins, all those hormones that are released when you do that sort of exercise, that sort of movement,
exactly. Yeah,
will increase your motivation.
yeah, that's exactly it. So if anybody wants to tune into a full episode on that, it's episode number 58. So go and tap into that if you feel that you need to hear a little bit more about
Brilliant.
movement. I just wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned that people might not understand what it
Yeah.
is. I know what it is, but some of the listeners may not. But metabolic syndrome, could you just give a brief description so that people know what that is?
Yeah, of course. So metabolic syndrome would be things like, say, type 2 diabetes and that type of thing, where there's often quite a lot of things going on. So somebody might sort of be carrying extra weight, their cholesterol might be raised, their blood pressure might be raised. They're, like we said, they might be getting results from the doctor to do with something called their HbA1c, which is looking at your blood sugar and how your body processes blood sugar. So there's now sort of quite a lot of research has showed that things like metabolic syndrome can sort of lead to other things later on in life as well. So they can be quite a big link to things like dementia and that type of thing. But the great thing is about metabolic syndrome is it is really lifestyle lifestyle can really affect it, basically. So if somebody hasn't even gone to the doctor, and say the 40 years, that's the time that people are going to the doctor for their 40-year check, and they might be finding, the doctor might say, well, your blood pressure's a little bit raised, you're getting a little bit closer to pre-diabetes, they might say your cholesterol levels are looking a little bit off. That's the time then. Now is the time that we can do the things that we've just talked about to really try and get our bodies in that place where we're not going to end up in having metabolic syndrome.
Yeah.
Which is what ideally we want to do, because obviously prevention is better than cure. But yeah, it's just sort of linked to that sort of cardiovascular inflammation type of picture.
Lifestyle related health issues.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for explaining that, because I know that somebody will have been listening and going, I don't know
What's
what
that?
that is.
What
And I know
mean?
Mr. Google can help you out, but I think it's nice to be able to hear it from Becki. Okay. You said, and did you say you got one more tip?
My final one, which actually we sort of put this on the absolute bottom of our list, which is joy and fun and connection. Because actually these things we talk about the supplements, we talk about the training schedule, we talk about the fasting and all that sort of thing. But actually, when was the last time you just sat and laughed with a friend? When was the last time you sort of really just watched your children playing, or that you decided that you were going to have 10 minutes to sit and just read a book or whatever it is? But just those moments of joy and that connection. And if you can have joy and connection at the same time, I mean, wow, it boosts, it sort of supports our nervous system in ways that go beyond what we can imagine. We're only just starting to sort of realize this sort of the impact on the body at that sort of physiological level. So I mean, when I talk about physiological level, I mean things that are going on inside the body that we can't really see. And things like joy and gratitude, they might sound like, it's all a little bit woo woo, but actually studies are starting to show that it has an effect on things like inflammation, which is where the inflammation is where the body is sort of a little bit, it's putting out fires that it doesn't need to put out, basically. It always thinks it's got to be I like the analogy of imagining you're putting out all these little fires that actually don't need to be putting out. So the body's in a bit of a state of alert all the
because
time.
inflammation's good when we've injured ourselves because
Absolutely.
it's protecting the injured part. But if we've got inflammation on a day-to-day basis, then our body's working way harder than it needs to look after itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And things like joy and connection can actually help to reduce inflammation. It can also be really, really, really good for protecting your brain.
Yeah.
Again, so connection, they talk about connection as actually one of the strategies to prevent things like dementia. That's we're talking about it on that sort of level now, because it is so important. And I think as busy mums owning a business, everyone else's fun gets put first, doesn't it? So the parties, the after school activities, we're racing around all the time. And I think it's so important for women to think, right, it doesn't, again, it's pockets of time are always really hard to find, but to just think, when did I last do that? What did I used to love doing when I was younger? What did I used to love doing? How could I start doing a little bit of that again? How could I bring a little bit more joy to my day?
I think it's about scheduling it in the same way that you might schedule in a dentist appointment or a workout or a podcast recording. If you don't schedule these pockets of time into your diary. Oh, Becki, are you still with me? You are, you're back. I lost you there for a moment.
I should be.
Yeah. So I was just saying it's almost like you need to schedule it into your diary in the same way as going to the dentist or going to the gym or recording a podcast or any of those other things that are going on in your week. We need to schedule it in. And if we're not scheduling in those moments of connection and joy and fun and laughter, then they're not going to happen because life does get busy. So the more we can actually proactively put something in our diary that once a week or once a month that we're making that time, I think that's when it happens. Because if we hope that it will happen by chance, it won't. In much the same way, if we hope that we'll eat a good meal by chance, it won't happen. Everything needs to be a little bit pre-planned.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, definitely. And that is what I was going to say for all the things. I'm really glad that you touched on that idea of planning, because we don't have to do a huge amount of planning, but just thinking, right, even if you had, like, going back to where we started, the breakfast, even if you decide what you're going to have and you have it on repeat.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like, that is literally fine.
Yeah.
If you've planned that in, have it on repeat. And I think that's absolutely right, that if we say, right, I'm going to try and be really joyful today, I'm going to notice the birds, and no, it isn't going to happen. And it's wonderful to have that mindset where maybe, that those moments of gratitude throughout the day is lovely. And that is definitely, is something that can be really great for our mental health and things. But I think you're right. We need to be looking at how, what we really love doing and how we could somehow block that in somewhere.
Yeah, because it really, really matters. It's not a nice to have. Like you said, the science is showing us it has an impact on inflammation. We know that isolation is one of the biggest killers in the world, certainly in the Western world.
Yeah.
And so we're not talking about this from wouldn't it be nice? It's actually really, really important. And particularly as solo business owners, when we are on our own a lot of the time, it's really important we create those opportunities to connect with people, whether it's through a screen like Becki and I are today or in person. Either way helps. In person is obviously optimal, is preferential, but that's not always possible. But if you can get on a virtual coffee with someone and have a great chat, then that's going to be better than just sitting at your desk on your own all day long, for sure.
absolutely. I think we're crying out now, aren't we, for community and for
Yeah,
connection. I think it's absolutely, and especially when, when women are going through perimenopause, because you can feel so isolated. You can have all these different things going, these symptoms showing up out of the blue that you can be really worried about, and not knowing what it is. And you can end up, 3 a.m. Googling symptoms, and you can really spiral. And I'm glad that people are talking about it more, but I think that connection just gives another opportunity
yeah,
for women to be able to talk about things that are, that are playing on their minds.
absolutely. Okay, we have we have done really well on our half an hour. We're, I don't know, about 30, 45 minutes now or something, but I'm going to bring this to a close now because that is just an amazing episode. And what I'm finding with all of my guests is I could just talk and talk and talk and talk with you, because I just think you've got such amazing wisdom to share. But I am going to bring it to a close. So, as I ask of everybody on Pepp Talks, one final question. How are you bringing peace and ease into your life and business?
Yeah, so my non-negotiable, this is Monday to Friday. Things are always a little bit different at the weekends. So I drop the kids at school, and then we're really lucky that I live right by a nature reserve. So I walk home instead of just quickly coming to the primary school just around the corner, but I go the long way round, so 20 minutes through the nature reserve. And it's just the best thing. So I might have a quick chat to my sister or one of my other friends for that, if I'm feeling like that connection's needed. But the other days, I won't have a podcast on. I am a podcast addict. I won't have anything on, and I'll just walk through the park, and it gets me. My brain then figures out what I need to do for the day. I'm calm. Like you say, it's a brisk walk. So I would have, I'm getting my motivation going. And that time in nature for me, especially was for someone who is prone to anxiety, is one of the best ways for me just to feel calm and feel ready. And it's a non-negotiable. Even in the winter, if it's pouring with rain, there I am in the park doing my thing.
Love that. I love that. Because if anybody who's been listening for any length of time to Pepp Talks or follows me on social media will know that that is one of my biggest go-tos as well. And one of my biggest recommendations to anybody is walking. And if you
Yeah,
can get in nature, even better. But it's
even
such
better.
a simple act. It's completely free of charge. And it has the most beneficial effect on your body and your brain well,
Yeah,
particularly your brain.
and your mood.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
your
and your
mood.
mood for sure. Oh, well, thank you, Becki, for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Oh, you've been an absolute pleasure. If you've loved what you've listened to, listeners, I don't know, my brain's just had a like perimenopausal moment there. If you're enjoy if you've enjoyed this episode, that's the words I'm trying to get to. If you've enjoyed this episode and you would like to find out a little bit more about Becki, all of her links will be down in the show notes. But Becki, where's the best place for people to come and find you?
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram. So my handle is Rebecca Beard Nutrition. And I'm forming a community there where women can just sort of feel heard, feel seen. I share little tips and things like that. So yeah, come along if you're not already there.
Amazing. And I know that you've shared with me a freebie for people as well. So I'll make sure that's down in the show notes too. One of Becki's favorite recipes, I think it is, if I'm right in saying.
Yeah, it's my quinoa energy balls, which
Ooh,
are
yum.
really yummy.
Yeah. So if you want to grab that, click the link down there too. And just one final thing for me to say before I say goodbye to you. As ever, if you have enjoyed this episode and you feel it would benefit somebody else, please, please do share it with them. The more we can share this out to everybody, the more of Becki's incredible wisdom can get out in the world, and the more women we can impact from all angles, but particularly from nutrition on this particular episode. Although I love the fact we touched on things beyond nutrition, which I was not expecting, but I love. And the other thing I just want to say is you might notice there's a new link down in my show notes. These podcast episodes are hosted completely free of charge. I will never, ever be signing up for ads or anything like that to fund these episodes. I will always be offering them for free. But if you love these episodes, either spread the love by sharing them, or if you fancy buying me a coffee, there's a link down there in the show notes. Click on the link and you can buy me a coffee. And I might buy Becki a coffee in return for her being here if you pay for one for me. You know, two for one, as it were. So yeah, if you're enjoying the episodes and you feel like like to give a little something back, that would be much appreciated. But in the meantime, I will say goodbye and I'll be back with you very soon for another Pepp Talks.